Hello and welcome to the August TCL Teen Bakealong. I am Marilyn, your teen librarian, and this month we are making a coconut pound cake. Now, when I was younger, I actually really disliked coconut, but I don't know why. I think it's because it was in like candy bars and stuff, like Almond Joys or whatnot. Not really my thing. But like fresh coconut, toasted coconut, and especially when you're putting it into like savory stuff or into sweet stuff, it turns out really tasty. So this one is actually also pretty easy to do. It's going to take a long time to bake, what with it being a pound cake and all that, but it's not too hard to put together. So let's tie on our aprons and let's get started. So here are all the tools and ingredients that you'll need. We've got our stick of softened unsalted butter. Yours is going to come nice and soft, obviously, because it will have been sitting in your bag. Dry ingredients, all going to come mixed together. We've got the applesauce to take place of the eggs, and it's the recipe, the original recipe was like 4 eggs, so we've cut it down to 2 eggs, which is 2 of these things of applesauce. We've got our sugar, which we will mix the butter with in a little bit. Our spatula, obviously, for beating all that together. Our vanilla, we've got a loaf pan, which is sitting on the oven. Yours will come with one, obviously. And this is toasted coconut. So your coconut is not going to come to you toasted, because that's a lot of toasting to do. But it's actually very easy to toast if you have an oven or a toaster oven. You don't have to, also. You can just have the straight coconut. But I'll explain a little bit later how to toast coconut, because it's very easy to do. You just kind of have to keep an eye on it, because it's one of those that goes from pale to brown to burnt very fast, as with most things like this. Like if you've ever toasted almonds, any kind of nuts like pecans, that kind of thing, they can turn pretty fast. So if you don't want to risk it, that's fine, but I'll still show you later how to do it. Anyway, yes, so we've got everything together. Let's get mixing. So first thing we're going to do is, a lot like when we do with cookies, and with a lot of cakes actually, is we're going to beat together the butter and the sugar. We've got about a half a cup of sugar here, and then our half cup of salt and butter. You can softened butter. You can see that is very soft. At least, yeah, there we go. Okay, so I've shown you how to do this before in previous. It's given me a little bit of trouble. But essentially, you just kind of want to moosh it and then get it all. We're looking for it to be light and fluffy, which seems like a strange goal. Well, it always does, description-wise, to go for with like butter and sugar. But it really does get all like whipped up, because you're essentially getting air into that butter at the same time that you're really like cutting it through with the sugar crystals. So that's how we know we've gotten it started. Now, I've tried a few times with like a whisk to see if that might work, and honestly, having like a spatula like this, or if you do have a hand mixer or a stand mixer, I'll say that right now, if you have a hand mixer or a stand mixer, please use that. It's much easier. But if you don't, this is just to show you that you can. It takes a lot more time, obviously, because it's not mechanical. And it can make your arm hurt. It always makes my arm hurt, just a little bit. But that's okay. It's worth it to make something delicious. So we'll get this whipped up off screen. There we go. So now we've got it. Yeah, we want that butter and that sugar mixed together. So then you have this big old ball of sugar and butter, and then you just kind of slap it around. Just kind of slap it around the bowl to get it nice and fluffy. So we'll do that, and then we'll be back. Alrighty, we've got our butter nice and fluffy. I'm actually really pleased with this. This is why it's good to make sure your butter is nice and soft. This is about how you want it. It almost looks kind of whipped cream-ish. So the next thing we're doing is adding in our eggs, quote-unquote. Eggs for you if you have them. If you don't, applesauce. And we're doing that one at a time because we need to mix them well, because the recipe tells us to. And also because we want to make sure we get one really incorporated before we add the other. Which, as we've seen previously with applesauce, can happen because that liquid is kind of clashing a bit with the fat of the butter. So this is where we'll start with a spatula. And actually, this is being much more cooperative. And I'm thinking it might be because our butter's nice and warm. Yes, there we go. So So if you have a deeper bowl like this, this might be a good thing to use because we kind of want to be we want to be firm with it. Woo! But as you can see, that applesauce tries to kind of whip out of there. So we're making sure that's nice and yes, that's turned out really well. It still has that little kind of feathered look to it, but that's okay. Okay, so with eggs, you can normally tell a bit better when it's all mixed in, but with applesauce, it's about as good as it's gonna get. So, here we go. Oh, that's partly because my spatula is covered in butter. So, here we go. Alright, so that's nice and incorporated. So now we add in the second. And for this one, though, I'm going to... Well, I would start. Yes, for this one, I'm going to start with a whisk, just because there's so much moisture in here. There we go. And it's not cookies, so, sorry about that loud clacking there. It's not cookies, so I don't expect it to become a full dough, plus there's no dry ingredients in there yet. There we go. Okay, that's it for the whisk. Oops. Let's not put that in there. I don't think that would taste very good. Okay. So there's our butter and our applesauce. That's about as good as we're gonna get it. So the last thing we add in for our wet ingredients is our vanilla. And this one I'm still, as you can see, being... Now that with how sloppy all this is, I'm being a little more gentle here, just so I can avoid having it splash up into me. Okay, so we've got all that mixed together, so now we put in our dry ingredients. Excuse me. Which is going to be the flour and the baking powder and salt. And we're folding that in, which means we're treating it kind of gently. So you see how I'm kind of just like scraping it off the sides and like folding it over. You see like a fold a little bit. And this is obviously is going to go more slowly than just mixing or whipping something around. So just take your time. There we go. Now you don't have to be if we're making, say, something like a macaron or like a mousse, which is very fancy. Too fancy for a Bakealong, let me tell you. But if you're making a mousse, you always want to treat it very, like dealing with egg whites. That's when you want to be super, super careful. For this, it's mostly going to be about texture, because since we're working with flour, it's like whenever you make, if you've ever made biscuits before, or scones, you want to handle the dough as little as possible, because the more you handle the dough, the tougher it gets. That's why when you make bread, you need it so much, is because we're wanting to give it strength. But if you're making anything else, like a biscuit, a pie crust too, that counts. You want to handle it as little as you can to make sure it stays nice and soft and tender. So this is obviously not a bread. It's a cake, even though we're cooking it in a loaf pan. But there we go. So you're waiting until it's just all combined, and I think we've got it. Look at that. Look at that. That looks quite nice, actually. Okay. Now the last thing, we have our cup of toasted coconut. Now, you can add all of it in, or you can save some for when we make a glaze at the end. What I'm going to do is, I've just got it all toasted. I'm just going to take like a handful and put it aside in a bowl that we can add. There we go, just a little bit. So not a ton, just a bit to sprinkle over the top once we're finished. And then the rest goes in. And that smells really nice. And same thing, just giving it some good folds. Look at this. There we go. That smells so nice. There we go. Okay. So that's all mixed. It smells lovely. So now take our loaf pan, which I have greased. I just sprayed with some cooking spray. And we're going to pour our batter in there. Well, pour is kind of a strong word. It's so thick, it's not really a pour. It's more of a just kind of plop it in there. So just plop. There we go. Clap. Perfect. And now we're going to spread that. We want it to be even, because this is going to bake for quite a long time because it's such a thick batter. And we want it to bake nice and even. So just spread that to the corners. Don't get super worried about it, but you know, just as even as you can get it. There we go. Nice, nice, nice. Okay. Now we are going to bake this for, in our 350 degree oven, for about an hour. This, because it's not too big, and this is a halved recipe, but it is heavy. Like if you pick up your loaf pan, you can feel this. It is heavy. When they call it, they don't call it a pound cake for nothing. So we're gonna put this in the oven for 1 hour. Check it after that, see where it goes. So I hope you enjoy. I'm sure this is gonna smell really good while it's baking. So just sit back, relax, and yeah. So while the pound cake is baking, I'm going to show you real quick how I toasted coconut. So I have a toaster oven. It just looks like this. You can probably use a conventional oven. I just like my toaster oven because it's smaller, it's easier to use. And again, you don't have to toast the coconut if you don't want to. But if you do want to, here's how you do it. So I started by putting down some foil and pouring my 1 cup of coconut into that. And I'm pressing it into a single layer. You want that so it toasts evenly. And it's going to toast quickly. There we go. So then I just put it into the oven. And I have it set to toast, so the temperature is auto set. So mine's at 450. You can give that a try. If you do, just keep an eye on it. The most important thing with toasting something like coconut is just keeping an eye on it. So I'm setting it to toast. I'm turning it on. And I'm just going to, I'm not going to have this all on film, but I'm just going to stand by it and watch. And I'll tell you about how long it took for my coconut to toast. All right. Boop. Bing. That's me stopping my toaster oven. That took about like 3 minutes. And I was right here watching the whole time. You can see that it's gotten darker in some places. That's okay. That's not burnt. And also because it's a toaster oven, it's a little uneven. You can see like the middle where the heating element isn't. So if you have a conventional oven, it might be a little bit easier. But that's it. About 3 minutes in the oven, and then you've got it, and then you're done. And it smells very good. So there you go. You have toasted your coconut. Alright, it has been 1 hour, and it's looking really good. So we're going to do our little... Oh yeah, ooh, yes. Okay, so it's hard to see, but there's like a teeny tiny bit of batter still on that toothpick, which means it is done. So we're going to take this out, and we're going to cool it, and we're going to make a little glaze for it. Alright, we're going to... The pound cake is cooling. It's just about totally cool. So we're going to make our glaze, which we've also made before. So you just need powdered sugar and really any liquid. So I just use, if you've got coconut milk, definitely use coconut milk on that one, because it'll just add that extra little bit of flavor. But if you don't, any liquid's fine. You probably want to use something like cream, maybe add like in some vanilla. I actually used a little bit of coffee creamer that I have, just because it's a little bit thicker. But see, look at this. It comes together nicely. This is a cup of powdered sugar and 2 tablespoons of liquid. You can add more to make the glaze a little bit thinner. You can, well, you can't add a little less. Well, you can add a little more powdered sugar if, say, you added maybe 4 tablespoons or so of liquid and maybe it's too thin, so you didn't want to thicken it up, you can just add more powdered sugar. There we go. Oh, yes, look at that. Yeah, you get kind of ribbony there. Perfect. So, I'm going to mix in a little bit of the rest of that powder here. There we go. We've got our pound cake over here, and this will drip a little bit, but it might just be thick enough that we don't actually get as much of a drippy problem. There we go. There we go. Oh, and I probably should have put something under these, but you know, I almost never do. Why start now? Alrighty. Now we're gonna let that spread, and I'm gonna spread it just a little bit. There we go. There we go. Very nice, very nice. And this is a little bit of that toasted coconut that I set aside. So we're just gonna sprinkle that on top. Oh, yes. I'm really pleased. I hope this turns out well, because it looks really good. You'll notice it didn't get much of a rise, like you might get on, like, say a banana bread or something like that. But that's okay, because this is also a very wet and heavy dough. So he's not going to, the bread, the pound cake, is not going to rise very much. Anyway, so we're going to let this set just a little bit before we cut into it, so stay tuned. And we're back. It's been maybe about 15 minutes or so. You can see the glaze is very nicely set. It's not completely firm, it's a little wet underneath, but that's okay. So now we get to give it a try. Here we go. Ooh. Oh, that is... So with pound cakes, it's always going to be very moist and very dense. So that's good. Mmm. That's really tasty. So, I know I said plenty of times you don't have to roast the coconut, but tasting this now, I highly recommend it. Mmm. Because this is really good. Mmm. And really easy to make. It takes a while to actually bake, but actually getting it all together, no time at all. Mmm. I'm gonna have a little bit more after this. So I hope you enjoyed this month's Bakealong. I hope that this goes easily for you. I hope you enjoy it, and I do hope you try a little bit something new, maybe toasting that coconut if you've never done it before. And we will see you in the next one.